So I think 3, 4, 5 years back, I was speaking with Naren from Nexus, and I was talking to him about like how I think Pratilipi is going to evolve. And he said that, Ranjit, you talk a lot about long term. You don't really talk about what is going to happen in a quarter or a month or a year, which is rare and it's good. But you have to understand that even though long term is the only thing that matters, long term will not even happen unless you do short term well enough. So you have to survive in the short term if you want to kind of do things which are going to be important in the long term, even though short term doesn't matter at all, but it matters in the form of survival. I think that has probably been one of the best pieces of advice that I have heard and that we have tried to keep in mind with respect to every decision that we make.
Hey Ranjit, thanks a lot for taking our time to do this. I'm really excited about this conversation and learning more about you, your journey at Pratilipi, and what you've built.
Thanks a lot for having me here. It's a pleasure.
Ranjit, so would love to start from early days for you. Where you grew up, any early influences in potentially building Pratilipi or entrepreneurship. If you could walk us through your growing up days, where you went to school, college, um, you worked a little bit and then started your company. So if you could walk us through that journey and potentially talk us through the inspiration for Pratilipi.
I was born in a very small village, like less than 1,000 population village in Raebareli, Uttar Pradesh. My father was in army, so with him I kind of studied in a bunch of different places. But I think vast majority of my life, from class 7th till class 12th, I studied in Raebareli. So my mom used to live with me in a rented place in Raebareli city, and my village was like 15 kilometers away from there. So we'll stay for 5 days in the city, and then for 2 days we'll go back to my home, like my village, basically. In parallel to this, I've been a voracious reader. I used to read like 130, 140 books a year. Started by reading comics, then started reading classical Hindi literature, textbooks, like any stream, any class that I could find in Hindi or English. Then started reading contemporary Hindi literature. Then started reading whatever I could on. So my uncle, my father's elder brother, was a writer. So he would get a lot of books from his friends. I'll kind of go through all of those. He also had a big library, so I'll go through all of those. Any comic shop near my place, I'll generally have a deal that the guy can go and basically just roam around or do whatever for 3, 4, 5 hours. I'll watch over their shop, like handle their customers, but in return, I get to read whatever I want for free. So this is how essentially I got into a habit of reading. Then in 2006, I went to Bhubaneswar for my engineering. And that is when I realized that Hindi content was not really available as much. So offline bookstores can only carry a limited number of books. And if you read as much as I did, then you probably had read most of those. And online, there really wasn't anything in 2006. So I shifted to reading English, but I also started cribbing to my friends that, this is ridiculous. It should be my choice if I want to read Hindi or English or Marathi or Tamil or French or German. It should not be because of lack of access. That's not how the world should be. Did not really do it anything about it at the time, primarily because my family essentially said that, coming from a lower middle class family, stability is more important. So get a job so you have a backup option. So I went and did my MBA. Then I joined Vodafone, worked there for a couple of years, did a good job, such a good job that I thought that, when you are 24, you probably want to struggle a little bit. You want to kind of find out things which are challenging, which push you. And so I quit my job. Plan was to basically find a startup, or rather not even a startup, find out a CEO that I thought was both smarter and more ambitious than me, and then just beg them for a job. So I had already done computer science engineering. I had worked in banks, in strategy, in retail, marketing, channel sales. So thought process was that I can do a little bit of a lot of different things. So it doesn't really matter what kind of job. It's just that I want to work with someone that I believe is smarter and more ambitious or more driven than I am. Roamed around the country, met a lot of founders, liked some people, did not like anybody enough to beg for a job. And around this time, some of my friends to whom I had cribbed earlier that, this is not how the world should be, they called me back and said that if nobody else is solving this, why don't you give it a shot? And I thought, makes sense. So that is how essentially Pratilipi started. That is also how I got first few team members, including co-founders. So these were people who had already heard me talk about this problem. So it was relatively speaking easier to kind of convince them to come and join me. And that is how essentially we started building Pratilipi.
Super interesting. And the space in which you decided to build, a lot of people may have told you it's already done, there's too much already there. Oh, it doesn't make sense to build, nobody in India will read. There's so many other networks where people are reading. What gave you the conviction that you could build um, something in this? And if you could share some of the more common feedback that folks like you would have got in the early days.
Instantly, the most common feedback, and now it sounds funny, was that nobody is going to read long form on mobile. Uh, in fact, most people said nobody's going to read on mobile. And then a lot of people also said that, why would anybody ever create content for free? I would give people example of YouTube. The answer would be no, YouTube is video. I'll give people example of Twitter. People say no, Twitter is short form. Then I'll give example of Quora, and people say no, it is Q&A. I'll give example of China literature or Wattpad, and people say no, it is US or China. Like, what are you thinking? Like, you basically want me to have an exact same comparable, which is exactly similar to Pratlipi and which is already in India, which is already launched. Then why would I be doing this in the first place? So obviously, it has to be something new. Like, obviously, there is no benchmark which is in the exact same space, in the exact same country with the exact same model. Like, that's ridiculous, useless feedback. But I think what kept me going largely was that I've never really been one to follow authority very well. So I don't particularly care about people's age or previously what they have done. I generally think of things from first principles in the sense that whether it makes sense or not. And because I read a lot, as I was saying earlier, means that I am generally more exposed to a variety of different perspectives, and then I handpick which of these kind of make sense to me. Obviously, sometimes I would be wrong, but it's just another perspective. So it wasn't really that difficult for me to at least kind of tackle the feedback. It was like, sure, you are saying this, and sure, you are supposed to be an expert, but you haven't really studied this and this and this. And so this is possible.
Our topic for this week is building an audience in Bharat, and would love to kind of go talk through your story and how you got started, where you had people kind of trying to compare your idea to different things. How did you go about reaching your first few customers? How did you get your first audience?
So let me start with this, that I don't really consider building for Bharat any different from, let's say, building for French or German or whatever else. At the end of the day, users are users. They have their own needs. They have their own problems. Our understanding was that from very, very early on, when we started building Pratlipi, we started with the assumption that we don't really know what to build. So we knew that, okay, this is a problem that I want to solve, but we did not really marry ourselves to the idea of a solution. We said, okay, this is our initial hypothesis. We'll talk to a bunch of folks to refine the hypothesis. Then we'll launch a product and see how it works. And then as we kind of go along, we'll continue to evolve our thesis. So that is basically how we looked at it. That's how I still look at our product as well as our company. So everything that we do, either as part of the product or as part of the company, we still think of it as a thesis or experiment. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, and that's okay as long as we keep on refining. As far as getting the first few users is concerned, so I think for any typical marketplace, generally you always face through that chicken egg problem, that if you don't have supply, how do you get demand? If you don't have demand, how do you get supply? So we decided to kind of solve that by short circuiting supply to at least some extent, and then focusing on demand, and then continue to focus more and more on supply. So even before deciding to build Pratlipi, one of the things that I had done was that I had spoken with about 350 odd authors in trying to understand, why does this problem even exist? Like, it doesn't make sense that something like this shouldn't have already been built. So when we decided to pursue Pratlipi, the first thing that we did was we reached out to these people and talked to them about that, you have told us your problem and now we are trying to solve it. Would you like to help us? So a lot of people still said no, primarily because, again, their point of view was that you don't really have any readers. So why would I spend any time or any energy on doing this? So our counterpoint to them basically was that, what if you don't have to spend any time whatsoever? All you have to do is say yes. We will do everything else. So we'll make your account, we'll upload your content. If people are reading it, we'll tell you. Whatever feedback you are getting, we'll tell you, and all of that. So that is how we convinced about 150 of these 350 writers. The second thing that we did was we got some public domain content in the languages that we had launched. So public domain definition will be different in different countries, but in India, basically, once a writer passes away, 60 years post that, the content gets into public domain. So we got about 100, 150 odd stories from public domain content. And then we focused on trying to find these people some readers, number one. And number two, we just tried to make the writers who are still alive feel as special and as good as possible. So these writers then started sharing these profile links on Facebook and other channels, mainly Facebook. And then their friends would basically come to us and say that, you have published my friend's story, so why don't you publish our story as well? And we would say, absolutely great, just send us your story and we'll publish it. So this is how we essentially started growing, and this is how we got to our first maybe 1,000 writers.
Amazing. Yeah, you really, and would like to understand a bit more about what were kind of the things that writers were telling you. What were the problems, and how did you learn and evolve from them in those early days?
So sometimes writers would say something, but they would mean something else. But mostly writers would essentially say that either like the younger generation simply doesn't want to read, or they will say that people are only interested in reading certain kind of content, for example, pulp fiction. Or people will say, for example, that, young generation is always on mobile and they never have time. Like people who are on mobile, they have very short concentration spans, so nobody would be interested in long form. Or people will say that, okay, if you are going to publish my story, you should charge me money, because that's how it currently works. So 99% of publishing in India basically is that writers pay money to get published, and bunch of things around that. Our thesis was that let's at least try it out. Maybe you are right, and maybe this doesn't work, but like, what is the harm in trying it out? Maybe people want to read. Maybe they did not read simply because they did not have access to high enough quality content. So we said, let's try it out and we'll see. If people don't like this, maybe we'll evolve our thought process. Maybe we'll launch something else. So that's how we essentially started building. Once we started building, the first few things that writers asked us was, how do I know how many people are reading my story? If people want to give me a feedback, how do they give a feedback to us? If there's a reader who has already read my 2 stories, then if I publish my 3rd story, they should at least know that I have published a 3rd story. So we basically kept on building features around whatever user requests were asking that seemed to kind of follow through a majority of writers. And that's how we essentially kind of kept taking feedback as well as acting on that feedback.
And so you had this good start. You started getting feedback, and you started getting a bit of referrals. At what point did you know that this was actually taking off? People call it product market fit.
I am not a big believer in the idea. I still don't know if we have product market fit or not. Don't know, don't care. As long as our users like us, as long as our readers and writers have a high enough NPS, we are fine.
Interesting. So NPS, that's the kind of metric that you use to.
So we have 2 North Star matrices to make sure that we are moving in the right direction. And we have 2 check matrices, which kind of help us figure out if we are moving in the right direction, the right manner. So Pratilipi is a slightly weird company in many, many different ways. But one of those ways is that we are very clear that not only just the destination, but also the journey is important. So not only do we want to create large impact, we want to make sure that we are creating that impact in the right manner. So our North Stars are number of stories published and number of stories read. And then 2 check matrices are completion rate and NPS. So NPS is one of the 4 most important things that we track.
And how do you define your audience? Like, how do you think about them, split them up? And is it different across different geographies? Or are you looking at readers who prefer different genres?
So Pratilipi works at extremes in this context. One, the way we define our audience essentially is that everybody who wants to consume a story, could be read, watch, listen, whatever, is an audience. So it has nothing to do with gender, age, geography, language, whatever else, doesn't matter. Considering that I have done an MBA, it's not a typical answer that people expect. People expect some kind of STP analysis. But our thesis broadly is that in consumer internet, it's very, very rare that you can build a product which is not mass market. And because Pratilipi's aim or vision essentially is to democratize storytelling, anybody who's interested in stories is an audience. So this is one extreme where we don't define an audience at all. The second extreme essentially is that we think individual people are very, well, individual. And stories, just like food or movies, for example, like people have their own unique taste. So who am I to basically say that whether people should like romance or horror, or should they like reading stories or listening to stories or watching stories or something else? So our thesis has always been that we'll try and personalize our recommendation systems in such a manner that it kind of tries and predicts what kind of stories you are interested in, and then shows that kind of stories to you. And we try to take away as many biases as possible. So demographics is a very, very small part of our recommendation system, probably less than 1%. We would rather focus on you as an individual and your own reading history, your own social graph, the kind of people that you are following, the kind of stories that you're sharing, rating and reviewing and stuff like that. And that is how we'll recommend your stories. So on one side, like the audience is everyone. On the other extreme, audience is a person, like a group of one.
That's a unique way to think about it. And maybe you can share some kind of non-intuitive thing that you learned about your audience in your journey, something that, you know, wasn't obvious to you when you started.
So a few things, even though I said that our audience is basically everyone, obviously at a particular point in time, we would still have like audience, which is more towards one base or another base. So when we started building Pratilipi, our guess was that a majority of our audience would be older people. A majority of our audience would be men, simply because in India, about I think 78-79% of the population which has access to internet is men. And that vast majority of these, like 80-90% would be tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 placed people. What turned out was very, very different. Even today, and this was even more extreme earlier, but even today, roughly about 51-52% of our audience is female. About 63-64% of our users are between 18 to 34. And about 48-49% of our audience resides in top 7 cities. We, or at least I wouldn't have expected any of these three. Then there are certain cliches which are actually correct. So for example, a vast majority of North India actually does love Pulp Fiction. And then there are certain other geographies or certain other languages where other genres are more popular.
Fascinating. And you spoke a bit about this, but would like to come back to it. You know, you spoke about the marketplace or platform problem, the chicken and the egg situation. I think it's an even bigger problem when it comes to content platforms. And you now have, 25 million monthly active readers. How did you think about getting to critical mass? I mean, you spoke about how you kind of shortcut it to start off with, but and do you like measure that, or I mean, is that something?
I think, right. So I think honestly, this is one of my big 3 mistakes as a CEO. We did not invest enough time, enough energy, enough money into seeding. I think if I had done that, we would have achieved the same scale where we are at now, but we could have done that in 2 years sooner. So I think we spent like a lot of energy into getting to like the first 300, 400, 500 writers. But after that, we kind of just believe that, you know, as long as we continue to keep our users happy on both reader side and writer side, they will kind of take care of growth. And which is true. It's just, it takes longer. If I had to do it again, I would have invested a lot more time and a lot more energy into getting that initial supply side from instead of 500 writers to maybe 5,000 or even 15,000, 25,000 writers. So what we did largely was what I told you. So 2 bits were public domain content, the writers that I had already reached out to. And the 3rd bit was just sheer hustle, which is like find out writers wherever you can and just reach out to them and request them and ask them if they would like to come and publish on Pratilipi. But we did not do it enough, to be honest.
So definitely a lesson that our listeners can take away from this to try and see the supply side.
One of the most common advices that I give founders now, and also advice that we ourselves have followed as we have launched new companies or new products rather. So we have invested significant amount of time and money and energy seeding Pratilipi Comics and Pratilipi FM before we even talk about growth or before even we think about demand generation.
And would like to ask you a bit more about that. You know, you've spoken about how you've learned and now launched multiple different products. Can you tell us about your process for doing that? How do you kind of...
So it's again slightly probably weird. So the way Pratilipi works is that I don't decide, or my board doesn't decide what product to launch next. It's usually by like someone who comes to me and says that, Ranjit, I want to do this, or I think this would be big. I ask to go back and do some research and come back to me with a slightly better idea around what the problem statement is. And as soon as they are able to convince me, they go and launch that product. So it's like very, very grounds up strategy instead of top down strategy. As long as it helps us in our vision of democratizing storytelling, we are generally more than happy to kind of pursue it. As long as if it works, it has to be large enough. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So we are not interested in something that could be very easy, very successful, but only for 1,000 people. So we are very, very interested in the scale of impact that we can create. But as long as that is correct and as long as it furthers our vision, we are fine with it.
I have to ask this question. I imagine that in the pandemic, a lot more people would have been turning to platforms like yours and wanting to read and explore new things. Is that true? How did you kind of cope with it? And also, how did you deal with employees and kind of that side of it as well, keeping everyone motivated?
So from the business point of view, it was up, but it wasn't really as significant a up as I have heard some other companies say. So we had maybe about a 20% up when the lockdown started last year. But outside of that, I think we kind of grow almost consistently at about 4x year on year or 50% quarter on quarter, and that has remained largely consistent for the last 5 years. So I don't think it has obviously there are quarters where we grow lesser and there are quarters where we grow more. But if you look at it from a year-long horizon, we are almost always growing at the same pace. And like last year was no exception, except for the 15-20% extra bump up that we saw. In terms of team, I think that has been the hardest part of probably last year and a half. So Pratilipi, as I was saying, is a weird company in many, many different ways. One of those ways is that like we kind of put a lot of emphasis on people, which has meant that our NPS on employee side has been one of the highest in the world. So our employee NPS has never gone below 70. On an average, it's usually around 80 for context. But that also has a downside. So people like other people in the team, which means that due to pandemic, when they were not able to see people, when they were not able to kind of talk to people and do shared activities together with people, it's very, very difficult for people's mental health. And we have been trying to do a lot of different things. I wouldn't say that we have done a very good job. And there's a lot more work to do. That's probably all that I can say. Like it has been absolutely hard, both because of the pandemic itself, because of like their friends and family suffering through either COVID or economic uncertainty, and then not being able to work with your friends, not being able to play cricket or chess or badminton with your friends hasn't been easy.
Wow, that NPS is insane. I think very few companies are able to get to there, and I don't think they even measure it. So the first problem is a lot don't even measure it, and the ones who measure it, I don't think it's that high. What are next steps for the weird company that Pratilipi is? How are you thinking about the next year? I know recently you guys have done a fantastic job with keeping employees safe. I'd actually tweeted about emotional health and what your companies are doing, and I think one of your team members shared a screenshot of what you had shared with the rest of the team. So how are you handling the situation today, and what's the plan for the coming year?
So in general, we believe in treating people as mature adults. So which means that we almost never mandate anything. So it's unless like it's a government mandate or something, like it's a legal thing, we try and kind of keep things as flexible as possible with respect to everything. So we understand that people are independent individuals. They have their own aspirations, their own constraints, their own like what they want to do and how they want to do it, and so on and so forth. So we want to kind of try and retain that even as the company scales. But as the company scales and the number of people increases in the team, it becomes harder and harder to have that level of independence with like the level of transparency that we always have had. So I think that is going to be probably my number 2 priority in the next 1 to 3 years. How do we maintain the kind of culture that we have, or even evolve it to become even better? That's probably my number 2 priority, as I was saying. The number 1 priority is almost always the same. How do we kind of get the best people to come and work with us, and the people who are already here at Pratilipi, how do we make sure that they are growing both as person and as professional at the fastest pace possible? I think as long as we are able to do these 2 things, the people will kind of take care of everything else. This year is going to be interesting because of just how much has happened, both in the broader world and in Pratilipi's ecosystem. So till about a year back, we had one product we were talking about on like storytelling and all of that, but basically Pratilipi looked like online literature company, and that's it. Now we have 5 products. We have started our IP licensing. Our first web series just came out, I think maybe about 10 days to 15 days back. Our first book series started coming out, again, I think 20-25 days back. Our first comic series either just came out this week or to come out next week. We just started monetization in some of our products. So I think there's a lot that is going to be happening in this year. So it's going to be interesting looking at how things kind of move all at the same time.
Fascinating. I actually didn't know you guys did all these new product launches in the pandemic itself. That's
mostly a coincidence, to be fair, but yes.
Yeah. No. I mean, it's very good. I think getting a distributed team to execute something like that is pretty good. No, thank you for sharing your journey, and thank you for sharing what is next for you guys. Would like to close with the question that we ask all our guests, and why we call this Founders Unfiltered. what is one piece of unfiltered advice or feedback you received as a founder or in your career that's really stayed with you and you'd like to share with us?
I think if there's one, then it's relatively easy, at least at this point in time. So I think 3, 4, 5 years back, I was speaking with Naren from Nexus, and I was talking to him about like how I think Prathivi is going to evolve. And he said that, Ranjit, you talk a lot about long term. You don't really talk about what is going to happen in a quarter or a month or a year, which is rare and it's good. But you have to understand that even though long term is the only thing that matters, long term will not even happen unless you do short term well enough. So you have to survive in the short term if you want to kind of do things which are going to be important in the long term, even though short term doesn't matter at all, but it matters in the form of survival. I think that has probably been one of the best pieces of advice that I have heard and that we have tried to keep in mind with respect to every decision that we make.
We all keep talking about the long term, especially in our ecosystem. It's so important, but
to be honest, very few people actually think like that, right? Like how many founders do you know who, let's assume, have a terrible quarter and their board basically comes back and says, hey,
yeah.
most people, your board will start worrying, your team will start worrying, the CEO himself will start worrying. So most people say that they are long term, but they are really not.
Yeah. The actions and behavior are all short term.
There's a old saying, right? Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah. Let's end with that. Thanks a lot, Ranjit, for your time. Really fun conversation. We look forward to sharing this with our listeners and viewers. And they've definitely learned a lot. I mean, Mazen and I have definitely learned a lot from this conversation. Thanks a lot.
For having me here. It has been a pleasure.